Okay, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Pain Points on the Pain and Profits podcast, where every single week, sometimes twice a week now, we're starting to break down political, economical, social issues that impact us as entrepreneurs, talking about things that are happening in business and things that we need to be thinking about as entrepreneurs, and kind of show you guys where our values align. And we think that your vibe attracts your tribe. And so if you're listening to this pod, you're probably into that. And so, per usual, Darius has got some stories teed up, and we're going to talk about those things. And see what we can do.
Yes, sir. Okay, so today we're going to talk about influence and risk.
Okay.
And it's funny, there's many ways to think about influence, so just note that, influence and risk. So we're gonna kick it off with Kai Cenat. Do you know who Kai Cenat is?
I have no idea who that is.
Okay.
Kai Cenat?
Kai Cenat.
Cenat,
depending on who you are and where you're from. We're going to touch on him. We're going to touch on Tristan Tate, talking about the West. And we're going to touch on risk versus security and freedom.
Okay.
But if I could kick it off, I want to ask you a question. What do you think is the number one desired career path for Gen Z?
Oh, content creator.
Content creator.
All day.
So, correct. So the number one desired career path amongst Gen Z is content creator, YouTuber, blogger, basically. But it also changes by country. So in the UK, it's kind of the same parallel as the United States. But what would you guess in China the number one desired occupation is right now amongst Gen Zers?
I'm going to say mathematician, entrepreneur.
Close but no cigar, but it's astronaut.
Oh,
right. They combine some math, some physics.
Yeah.
But why I bring that up is because depending on what reports you read and what studies you read, somewhere between 73 and 86% of Gen Zers want to be influencers. And
I'm so influential.
And I think a picture of where that can go came forth over the weekend. So Kai Cenat, I asked about Kai Cenat. He is a content creator, primarily on Twitch.
Oh, is this the dude that blew up New York?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct. So CNN article by Mark Morales and Zoe Satile cover this event. And so it kicks it off. Social media influencer Kai Cenat has been charged with inciting a riot and unlawful assembly after thousands strong crowds gathered in Union Square in New York City for a giveaway, leaving dozens of people arrested and several police officers injured. Cenat, who has over 4 million followers on YouTube, over 5 million on Instagram, and 6.5 million on Twitch, said during a Wednesday stream that he would be hosting a huge giveaway Friday at 4 in Union Square Park. And in this giveaway, he said he was going to be giving away computers, PlayStations, microphones, keyboards, webcams, gaming chairs, headphones, and gift cards, all from a truck, and because he felt like New York City really deserved it. That was his motivation. And so...
So I'm so inspired.
For sure. So quickly, it went from crowds of 100 to a couple of thousands of kids in minutes, causing the NYPD to activate a level 4 response, which is its highest disaster response.
Jeez.
And one of the gentlemen comments on it, the police chief comments and says, the individuals in the park began to commit acts of violence toward the police and the public. He said that some attendees took items from a nearby construction site. You have people walking around with shovels, axes, and other tools from the construction. Individuals were also lighting fireworks, throwing them toward the police. They were throwing them towards each other. Cenat was removed by police for safety reasons. I'm gonna cap this here. He says, the police, Mayor Adams says, he believes outside influencers may have attempted to aggravate the situation. You don't come to give free Game Boys and bring smoke bombs and M80s, Adams says. The mayor said the gathering, which could have turned ugly, is not a policing issue. This is a parenting issue. Note that. Several police officers were injured in the frenzy, and quite a few people were arrested as police worked to clear the crowd. The police chief said he gestured at the dirt on his own uniform, saying, I was in the middle of the crowd, and I was hit with multiple objects. In the end, police arrested 65 people, including 30 juveniles. And he noted that he saw young people injured in the crowd, as well as many police officers. Cenat was charged with 2 counts of inciting a riot, unlawful assembly, among other charges. But a couple publications came out that basically said he got a ticket. So he walked scot-free. And so why we bring this up and we touch on influence today is what I want to tee up for you is 73 to 86% of Gen Zers want to be influencers. Here we have this situation with this influencer. I want to know, what would be your advice to these people who are like a Kai Cenat? What would be your advice to them in terms of the responsibility that comes along with influence, and maybe how you would actually define what true influence is?
I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. So it's a big responsibility to have that much influence. What's the stat? Like, we'll influence 10,000 people in our life, whether we like it or not. This guy's got a way bigger platform than that.
20 million.
Yeah. I think the first question was,
just the advice on responsibility, like how to handle that. Because to me,
influence is really just, when done right, is leadership. You can definitely have influence over people in a negative way, right? Like this, what's the saying? Show me five of your closest friends and I'll show you your future.
Yes.
I don't think he really intended it to go as crazy as it did. I mean, lesson learned. How old is this guy?
He's got to be early 20s, if that.
Yeah. So little naivete on how that might go out or play out. Probably in the future, he does it different as a byproduct. But I don't know if he can be held personally responsible for everybody else's crazy actions. But he probably should take some ownership over the situation.
Yeah.
Then again, he's 23, so not expecting too much out of him. And then what was the second part of the question?
Just how would you actually define influence? For someone out there saying, I want to be an influencer. Well, maybe you should start by defining influence.
Yeah, influence is really just leadership, So you see it in, the micro level, just in your family, like as a dad, right? Your kids are watching everything that you do, the way that you treat your wife, the way that you talk about money, your faith, your sleep habits, your eating habits, your exercising habits. And so it's what people see and potentially mimic. And so that, that goes into being a leader at a company and how you lead your people, how you make decisions. And it's ultimately kind of all oriented in what's your true north.
Yeah.
For me, that's, honor God always and always. I don't always do that. But with that true north, it forces me to take extreme personal accountability when I do mess up.
Yeah.
And make things right straight away. So hopefully he does that in this situation.
Yeah.
But having a platform, I think, as entrepreneurs, to be able to influence people and make impact in a very positive way is probably the most important thing for an entrepreneur in the next, call it 10, 20 years.
Correct.
If you don't have a platform, knowing that that's just where, the future consumer is going, you're going to be kind of SOL, honestly.
Yeah.
Long term.
Yeah. What's really interesting, I don't keep a pulse on everything Gen Z. I'm tapped in, as kids say. I'm tapped in.
You're pretty hip, bro.
I'm tapped in.
What are they?
Yeah, they're always doing something. Yeah, they're always doing some symbol with their hands and arms and fingers. But one of the things I have observed is that, so I actually would have a contrary take in that I think he was fully aware of what was going to happen. Just by way of, so if you consume content like we do, in particular consume his content, you would see he's been in that situation before with a rapper named Lil Uzi. And he's been in a situation where mobs of teens have descended upon Lil Uzi. And it's actually something that happens quite a bit in Gen Z culture, this sort of mobbing type of behavior where people come out for, racing and cars and all kinds of different things. And in particular, hip hop artists like a Lil Uzi. And so he's seen the outcome.
The frenzy.
Yeah, he's seen the frenzy. He's tasted that. And so I think he was actually fully aware of.
But do you think he really understood the impact?
I do because even some of his comments afterwards, it wasn't like that was my bad. I'll learn. It was like, this was special kind of thing.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one of the downfalls of, or one of the pitfalls and snares of this generation is attention at all cost, and of that generation rather. And so I think as a creator, he was fully aware. But I can't sit here and hold that against him. But I think one of the things we have to understand when looking at this generation is that this generation has a certain level of insensitivity to consequences that I think should lead us to sow into them more if we can.
Yeah. I think that's probably a byproduct of not getting their ass beat enough.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just being candid.
For sure.
When I grew up, you did something, you instantly felt the consequences.
Yeah.
You tried to take my stuff, we threw hands right there.
Yeah.
Hey, meet me at 3:00 behind the building. We're just going to settle this
Yeah.
and then hug it out after that and move on with our life. And so there's a little bit of like, they're a little bit jaded.
Yeah.
Maybe the helicopter parenting generation,
Yeah.
but there needs to be more consequence for sure.
Yeah.
So-
And I think it points to, and I used the word insensitized. I should have desensitized. But I think a lot of it comes from where we are as a culture and our relationship to things like truth, standards,
Right.
beauty. And it's part of a bigger conversation. So this won't be, I personally, for you listeners, I don't think this will be the last time we'll see something like this happen. Maybe not from him, but others. There was that last couple of months, there was the guy in the UK, he was running around, terrorizing people and inciting young people to run around and run into stores and vandalize. And
I didn't hear this.
yeah, and it's without consequence. And so it's this, I think the West has to really prepare for things we've seen in France, stuff we've seen in Chicago. I think the people behind it will be largely responsible for, what comes of it. But I don't think this will be the last time we'll see something like this. And I think for those of us who have young people out there in our lives who are aspiring to be influencers, who already are building platforms, I think we need to begin to sow. I would encourage you to sow. What Samson's saying is the cost of having such influence is very high. It comes with a high level of responsibility.
Absolutely.
And so if you're going to endorse your children, making content, being creators, or your nephews and nieces or your younger employees building these platforms, I think it would behoove you and us to sow into them that there are consequences for choices and how we influence.
Well, I also think that's why the millennial generation needs to actually create more content.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can have a positive influence on the next generation. Because the only content, it's like an episode of Lord of the Flies, right? It's just like all these young people who really have no life experience, all kind of raising each other.
Yeah.
And then the algorithm plays into that.
Correct.
And then they see more of the same content that is this kind of behavior. And that's the outcome or the byproduct. And they're not aware enough to understand that, one, it's happening, but two, what the byproduct of that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, creating content is a way to create influence and have an impact on the next generation.
I love it. Well, we'll switch gears from that. So that's the influence portion. Now here's a flip side of influence as we pivot to this next article, which is, so Tristan Tate, brother of Andrew Tate, who dominates the news.
Yep.
Tristan Tate, who he creates content, but he doesn't do a lot of interviews to the scale that Andrew does because he's not Andrew, right? But he did an interview recently over the last couple of days with Tucker Carlson. Tucker's been on a roll. He's on a roll, tearing it up.
Hey, Tucker, when you coming on the show, man?
Tuck, I will personally buy you 3 packs of Zen.
Is that his?
He likes the Zen, yeah. I'll do more. Just name the price.
I'll get you a whole brick.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Zen. Wow. All right. So this comes by way of Daily Express US, and Bernadette Giacomazzo. That is a Italian name.
You've been practicing.
I'm taking my time. I'm getting there. But this came out yesterday. So Tristan Tate, a self-proclaimed misogynist. I don't know about that. She's already losing me with
He's
that.
He's self-proclaimed misogynist?
Yes. I am a misogynist. Really? I don't know about that.
I'm pretty sure that's the title somebody else gives you.
All right. Fair enough. But here's what he said, which brings me here. He says, the dream of the West is dying. He says this in this interview, and this is their first interview since being let off house arrest. So Tate sat down with Tucker Carlson on August 6th for his first interview since being released. He says New York back in the 70s and the 80s, California were probably the best places in the world to live, quite literally. He said, now you have a billionaire living in New York or a multimillionaire living in New York. He's older, he's retired, but he can't walk on the streets at all. He has to stay in his apartment. He needs bodyguards to go to the store, the supermarket. He says, why not be like Dubai? And he was also pointing out how in Romania, it's like that too. Like you can be a person of success and not have to worry about, getting attacked or getting mugged. And his whole point, it goes back to the beginning. He says, I can drive my $5 million car around the Middle East with my $2 million watch on. I can go to various cafes, bars, have drinks, leave the car there, walk home, leave the car unlocked. No one steals because they deal with crime and immorality in a very serious way in these places, talking about Romania. But I go to the US and I feel unsafe. I feel unsafe walking around the streets. I see the pandemic of homelessness and drug use. How is this the capital of the free world? I look at the leadership and it makes me sick on every level. So yeah, the Middle East is the place to be now. Maybe one day in 20 years, the United States will be the place to be again. Mm-hmm. And so what I submit to you is the question, the more philosophical question is the West dying? Is America dying?
Mm. I think maybe the dream is on life support at the moment. My take on it is for the last 100 years, we've just been a consumer economy. And when you just consume, and take from the system, and you're not brought up in a system that's designed to build and grow and aspire, that this is kind of the byproduct of what you get. Do whatever makes you feel good, Darius, right? Live out your truth, right? Forget the truth, just your truth. And these other cultures, they have a standard where I wouldn't even say necessarily religion, but it's grounded in the religion of the moral standard. And so, we're a Christian value founded company, biblically founded country, same thing,
basically. Yeah.
And we don't really live in that type of society anymore. I mean, people are so far removed from Christ and Christianity and Christian values. And I do think part of that just has to do with how we've grown up over the last 100 years. Post World War II, the United States cut a deal that basically said, hey, Europe, you're going to need to rebuild. And so we will defend the oceans with the largest navy in the world, and we'll start to consume your goods, and we'll stop really being a producer of goods, and we'll just become a consumer. And so imagine, being, I don't know, like look at our grandparents. Right? They went through the Great Depression, right? That generation's gone. My grandmother just passed away. My dad's parents have been gone, And so that influence is not really on us anymore to protect what we have, work hard for what we have, not just consume, not just waste.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember walking to my grandma and grandpa's garage, and it was just littered with canned goods and canned foods, and they knew how to can, they knew how to garden, they knew how to do all these things for like being a self-sustaining, self-supporting individual.
Yeah.
And now we got everybody, sucking from the teats of the mother wolf. And that's just kind of the expectation, and so that's the byproduct of that, is just the human condition is we're designed to struggle and work. And when we don't have that, we just get weird.
Yeah.
And so, if you've ever dealt with any kind of proclivities like that, whether it's, porn, drugs, alcohol, idle hands, idle minds are the devil's playground. Right. And so, and when you replace that with hard work and working on building something, you alleviate a lot of those problems.
Yeah.
Because your mind is so consumed with positivity and adding and building than it is with just taking and consuming. And I also believe that that's where depression lives. This overly obsession over inward focus on ourself instead of an outward focus on adding value to the rest of the world. Yeah. I mean, I even know that in my own life when I'm struggling or stressed or whatever it might be, I'm overly focused on my own problems, right? Or not having enough. But as soon as I recognize that I have enough and that there's other people that have less, and I turn around and say, how can I serve? man, that whole feeling goes away.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. That is very true.
And so I would agree with him to a certain extent. That said, we are currently moving to a time more similar to pre-World War II, when the United States will remove itself from the global economy. It's already happening. We're seeing it with BRICS. We're seeing, the countries move off of the petrodollar system. We're seeing, we're now a net producer of oil and gas. I mean, the United States has more shale than Saudi Arabia. We have more navigable waterways, more farmland. We have the most united
coming over here to use our farmland.
United country, right? I can go from San Diego to New York and people speak the same language, share essentially the same values, right? That is not the same in other countries. It's not the same in Europe, right? For example, right? You drive across the border, somebody speaks a different language. That's why so many people in Europe speak different languages, right? We always thought it was just we're stupid Americans. It's like, no, if I drove from Colorado to Kansas and they spoke a different language and I wanted to do business, it would probably be pretty important for me to speak Kansasese, right? Or whatever that language is, right? You know what I'm saying? So the positive is we're in a turning right now, end of a 100-year cycle. Boomer generation's moving on, millennial generation stepping up, largest segment of the population, the workforce, entrepreneurship, millennial generation, and growing. We still do have people coming here and immigrating. Mm-hmm. That's why the millennial generation keeps growing. And the millennial generation will be the one to take the torch and really kind of lead us out of that, which is why you're seeing more guys like you and me start to create content, and guys like Vivek Ramaswamy rise up as political figures, because the mass market is looking for something different. The way that we have done it for the last 80, 100 years is not cutting it anymore. So I think in the next 20 years, we'll see this shift as the boomers die off and the millennials kind of lead us through into their elderhood.
Yeah. That's actually a perfect segue to this video. So I had 2 videos queued up. I don't know if we'll do the second one. I want to touch on the second one, but this is a perfect segue to this video that we have about security and freedom, because what lies in between them is what you could argue is risk. And so I'm going to queue up this video for you guys listening. You'll hear the audio. If you watch it on the YouTube, you'll see the actual video clip. And I got it queued up on the audio. It's about 2 minutes and 31 seconds, so bear with us.
Don't make the mistake of thinking that financial security is the same as financial freedom. In fact, don't even make the mistake of thinking that security is the same as freedom. A lot of people say, well, I just want some financial security. And they think they mean, I just want financial freedom. They're not only not the same, they're actually opposites. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make sure you pick the right door for you. I heard Robert Allen say a long time ago, there are 2 doors in life. How many doors? Talk to me, everybody. How many doors? There are 2 doors in life. And by the way, we know they're doors because they have doorknobs. Okay, so there are 2 doors in life. One is marked security. The other is marked freedom. Then he said, if you choose the door marked security, you get neither. If you choose the door marked freedom, you get both. I like what Helen Keller said. Helen Keller said that security does not exist in all of nature. Neither do the sons of men as a whole experience it. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. This is a woman who is blind and deaf. Let me ask you a question. Is your life a daring adventure, or are you turning it into nothing at all? Benjamin Franklin said, if we seek security, we have no independence. I submit to you that freedom, by its very nature, burns the bridge of security. And so people who take risks always feel like it might not work. That's part of the price you pay for freedom.
Let's go.
What is freedom? To me, freedom is a choice. Freedom means I have a choice. I can say yay or I can say nay. I can say yes or I can say no. I can go do the thing or not go do the thing. If I want to buy the thing, I can buy the thing or not buy the thing. And so for me, freedom is I have a choice. I am not compelled by my circumstance, by another person, by a situation to do a thing. But if I'm seeking security, I don't get to make the choices, because when you seek security, someone else makes your decisions for you. And so for me, I would rather take the risk of it not working, because the upside of it working is infinitely greater than the downside of it not working. See, if this
The upside of it working is significantly greater than the downside of it not working.
Mm.
So security, another chooses for you, but in freedom, you choose.
Mhm.
And segueing out of what we were just talking about, this our millennial generation, and even speaking to the Gen Z, actually even speaking to Gen X too, there's a price to be paid, in the form of, you're going to pay the price either way.
Yep.
You're going to pay the price. You will choose to have that choice and pay the price, or you will choose to have another make the choice for you and pay the fee, maybe.
Right.
And so I wanted to just run that by you. Mostly I wanted our listeners to hear that. It must be from my computer. My bad, guys. I wanted us to just hear that. You know, I didn't know if we necessarily had to comment on that, but that struck me this morning when I came across this clip.
Well, I think it's important because a couple weeks ago we talked about the downside risk is relative to the upside potential.
Yes.
Right. And so as an employee, you're limiting your downside risk, but you're also limiting your upside potential. As an entrepreneur, your downside risk is actually just zero, but your upside potential is infinite.
For sure.
And so that goes for anything. And I think, if we're talking about society in general, that's part of the problem. Is our grandparents were trying to figure out how they were going to eat food, right? We've all seen the wheelbarrow full of dollar bills to
Correct.
try to buy some bread, right? These kids are worried about how they're going to get the next pair of shoes or how they're going to be the next influencer.
Can I go show up for that giveaway for a PS5?
Exactly. And so the relative problems or struggle in our life, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, water, is just much different. And so part of what we're seeing right now is just a lack of understanding of what it means to really struggle. And so that's why you'll hear the older generation say, what would fix all our problems is a good depression.
Mm.
Because we're not worried about gender identity or your truth or my truth if you're just trying to figure out how you're going to eat.
For sure.
Right? It taps into a different part of the human condition because we're designed to struggle. And so we'll keep raising the bar and thinking that we need to go fight for more with not really understanding the unintended consequences. Like just look at the feminist movement, right? Started an unbelievable cause, right? Eventually made some huge headway and got some great results. And then just kind of kept going. And now it's gone hyperbolic the other direction,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now the feminist camp is arguing for men who think they're women to be included. It's that's the antithesis of feminism, right?
For sure.
So there's not real struggle anymore. So, I think that if you seek security and you're in this situation right now, and when the market turns, which I believe it's going to, then, you've made your bed, so you get to lie in it.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to be there to bail you out. But as entrepreneurs, every single day we're staking our flag and saying, hey, we're responsible for our own personal outcomes. And it doesn't matter what's happening in the market, good, bad, or indifferent. We're going to take ownership over that.
Yeah. And it makes me think too, even just in the context of what he's saying is, if you think about financial security versus financial freedom, immediately in my mind, when I think about financial security, I think about the feeling of I have enough.
Yeah.
Versus the feeling of we can do what we got to do. I have more than enough, and I can do plenty. I can bless. I can invest. They tend to have two different feels when you actually really contemplate them.
Yeah.
And
I think that's what keeps a lot of people from taking the entrepreneurial leap.
Right.
Is the security around.
100%.
It just feels good. If you listen to Dan Sullivan talk about entrepreneurship, he talks about the 4 freedoms. And he didn't say the 4 securities of entrepreneurship. He said the 4 freedoms. He said the first one's time. Entrepreneurs are ultimately seeking freedom of time. They don't like people to tell them how they should be utilizing their day.
Yes.
Once you get time freedom, then you can start to get money freedom, right? And you do that by reinvesting capital back into other people, other resources, right? That frees up your time, allows you to focus on higher dollar an hour stuff. I'm not worried on $10 an hour stuff or $10,000 an hour stuff. I'm worried about $100,000, $1 million an hour stuff. Then after that, you get freedom of relationship. You get to be picky and choosy about who you work with. You only, like as an employee, when your employer says you have to work with this person, you're working with them.
Right.
You don't have a choice, right? You don't get to be like, that guy's a dick. I don't want to work with him. You have to work with them. As an entrepreneur, you get to say, you're kind of an ass. I don't want to work with you. Your values don't align with my values. You're rude. You're disrespectful to my employees. See ya.
Yeah.
Right? And then eventually you have the freedom of this asset, the self-managing company that then frees you up to have purpose, right? Which is, how do I make more impact? You're not worried about spending your time to make money, having to work with people you don't like to make money. That's already all been taken care of for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's freedom. That's real freedom. That's the freedom of entrepreneurship. And whenever somebody feels that desire to take the leap, that's what they're chasing and seeking, but they settle on security.
Yeah.
But really they're just dying inside.
Yeah.
I was that guy. So.
Well, and honestly, from a spiritual lens, it makes me think of, ultimately that's because you still have to rest and depend on man-made things.
Correct.
And you cannot be secure with man. And so a closing point here is actually, if you want true security, you need to rely on God.
100%.
But the irony is, when you trust and depend on God, there's freedom.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
There is freedom when you let go of all that responsibility and know that I don't have to have it all figured out.
Yes.
God's going to put the right people, the right opportunity, open the right doors that I need to go through.
Yes.
And you'll know, because they'll just open easy.
Yeah.
When it's hard and you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, that's probably the wrong door.
Yeah. Well, Jesus says it, right? He says, my burden is light.
Yep.
It's light, and my yoke is easy. And it doesn't mean it's going to be peaches and cream.
Right.
But it does mean that if you probably shouldn't be feeling the weight of 1,000 worlds upon your shoulders.
Yeah.
Because the one who actually holds the world is the one who holds you.
Amen.
So that being said, Pain and Profits listeners, you want to close this out?
Yeah. I mean, if anything, chase freedom, not security. That's the biggest takeaway from today. And building a platform, creating content, starting your own business, those are all things that lead to freedom. And whenever you feel that uncertainty and insecurity in your life that's forcing you to stay in a job that you don't actually love, just do the deathbed test. 20 years from now, when you look back on your life, are you going to be happy that you stuck it out, that you stayed in the safe and secure job? Or are you going to be really excited that you took a shot? And the only way to figure it out and go and grow is to be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to learn 10 times more just being in the game. So just go do it.
Let's go. Thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate your time. Take care.
Peace.